So today I want to talk about something that most people in the mainstream media are getting completely wrong. And I mean completely wrong, because right now, as this war continues into its 6th week, there is a battle happening inside this war that almost nobody is explaining properly. It is not a battle of missiles and bombs. It is a battle of signals. It is a battle happening in the electromagnetic spectrum. And in that battle, something has gone very wrong for Israel and America. Something that the Pentagon does not want you to understand clearly. Because if you understand it clearly, you understand something about the limits of American power that changes how you see this entire conflict. Let me show you what I mean, because what I am about to explain is not speculation. It is documented. It is confirmed by Lloyd's List Intelligence, by CNN, by the Observer Research Foundation, by open source intelligence trackers. And it is being felt right now by over 1,100 commercial ships in the Persian Gulf, whose navigation systems are placing them at airports, on dry land, inside nuclear plants, and in the middle of the Iranian desert. This is not a malfunction. This is a weapon. And that weapon is now being turned against the F-35. Okay, so before I explain what is actually happening in the electromagnetic domain right now, I want to establish one thing very clearly, because this is important. The United States and Israel opened Operation Epic Fury on February 28, 2026. And in the opening hours of that operation, America did something very effective. It used EA-18G Growler aircraft, dedicated electronic warfare jets, to blind Iranian radar systems, sever command communications, and collapse Iran's internet to 4% of normal traffic levels before a single bomb had fallen. The United States went into this war understanding that the electromagnetic spectrum is the first battlefield. You win the spectrum first, then you send in the aircraft. That is the doctrine. America knows this. What America did not fully calculate is that Iran has been studying this doctrine for 15 years, and Iran has built an asymmetric answer to it. Not an answer that defeats America in the air, but an answer that makes America's most expensive asset, the F-35I Adir, increasingly difficult to trust in the operational environment Iran has now created over the Middle East. That asymmetric answer is GPS denial, and it is already producing consequences that the IDF is working very hard not to discuss publicly. Now let me explain how GPS denial actually works, because this is where most people get confused. There are two different things happening, and they are not the same thing. The first is jamming. Jamming is the simpler of the two. It floods GPS receivers with noise on the same frequency that satellites use. The receiver loses the signal. The pilot knows immediately. Warning lights activate. Backup systems engage. Jamming is detectable. It is manageable for a military aircraft. The F-35 has protocols for it. The second thing is spoofing. Spoofing is something different entirely. Spoofing does not block the GPS signal. It replaces it. It broadcasts counterfeit satellite signals so convincing that the GPS receiver accepts them as real. The navigation system continues operating. No warning lights activate. No alerts go to the pilot. The aircraft believes it is exactly where it says it is, except it is not. The coordinates are lies. The weapons release solutions are calculated against false positions. And the pilot has no way to know that everything his avionics are telling him is built on a fabricated foundation. This is what Iran has been deploying across the Strait of Hormuz and the broader Persian Gulf since the first day of Operation Epic Fury. Within 24 hours of the opening strikes, Lloyd's List Intelligence documented navigation failures across more than 100 commercial ships in UAE, Qatari, Omani, and Iranian waters simultaneously. These ships were not being jammed in the simple sense. Their GPS systems were showing them at airports, at nuclear plants, on Iranian land. The systems were registering confident positions, just completely false ones. By the end of the first week of this conflict, Lloyd's List had logged 1,735 interference events affecting 655 vessels, with daily incidents nearly doubling. This is not collateral disruption from a military operation. This is a systematic GPS spoofing campaign deployed at industrial scale across an entire maritime theater. And here is what makes it directly relevant to the air war. Iran did not deploy this capability only at sea, okay? Now let me tell you about the F-35I specifically because you need to understand what makes this aircraft uniquely vulnerable to exactly this kind of attack. The F-35I Adir is the most advanced combat aircraft Israel has ever operated. It is the flagship of Israeli air power. It carries a sensor fusion system that integrates radar data, infrared signatures, electronic emissions, and targeting solutions into one coherent picture for the pilot. It is a remarkable machine. And at its core, woven through every system aboard that aircraft, is a dependency on GPS so fundamental that when that dependency is compromised, the entire operational picture begins to degrade. The F-35's navigation architecture uses GPS not as a backup, but as its primary positioning reference. Its weapons delivery calculations for precision-guided munitions run through GPS. Its terrain-following flight profiles at low altitude run through GPS. Its formation coordination with other aircraft runs through GPS. Its target handoff procedures between networked aircraft run through GPS. You take GPS away cleanly from an F-35 in flight, the pilot knows. Backup inertial navigation activates. Accuracy degrades, but the mission can continue. But you replace GPS with spoofed data that the aircraft accepts as authentic, and you create a much more dangerous situation. The aircraft is flying and operating with full confidence. Every system is nominal, every indicator is green, and every coordinate the aircraft is processing is a carefully constructed lie. Now, on March 19th of this year, something happened that nobody in the Western press has adequately explained. An Israeli F-35I Adir made an emergency landing after a suspected Iranian strike on the aircraft. This is confirmed. This happened. The IDF acknowledged it. But here is the question nobody is asking. What exactly happened to that aircraft in the electromagnetic environment before it was struck? Because Iran's electronic warfare campaign and Iran's missile campaign are not separate operations. They are two layers of the same operational plan. You degrade the aircraft's situational awareness first, then you engage it. This is not my speculation. This is exactly what Iran did to the RQ-170 Sentinel drone in 2011. That drone was not shot down. It was spoofed. Iranian engineers isolated the drone from its control station, jammed its authentic GPS signal, and replaced it with a stronger counterfeit signal that guided the drone to a soft landing inside Iranian territory. The drone believed it was landing at its home base in Afghanistan. It was landing in Iran. The United States initially said the drone had malfunctioned. It had not malfunctioned. It had been deceived. And what Iran learned from that operation, from reverse engineering every system aboard that captured drone, informed 15 years of electronic warfare development that is now being deployed against Israel's most advanced aircraft in a live combat environment. Okay, let me give you the structural facts, because these are the facts that matter. The ones nobody is putting together in one place. Structural fact number one, Iran has deployed 7,787 military-grade GPS jammers since the beginning of this conflict. 7,787. This is not a classified number. This was reported by the Observer Research Foundation in its analysis of electronic warfare in the Iran war. These are not improvised devices. These are military-grade systems deployed systematically across Iranian territory and the surrounding maritime theater. The density of that deployment creates an electromagnetic environment that makes GPS-dependent operations fundamentally more complex and less reliable for every aircraft operating in the region. Iran also attempted to use these same systems to disrupt Starlink terminals, targeting the communications infrastructure that American and Israeli forces rely on for real-time coordination. This is not a country fighting with one hand tied behind its back. This is a country that understood from the beginning that the electromagnetic spectrum was where it could impose the highest cost on its adversary at the lowest cost to itself. Structural fact number two. The F-35's GPS vulnerability is not a secret inside the defense community. It is a documented and actively debated problem that the American defense establishment has been trying to solve for years. The RQ-170 capture in 2011 triggered an immediate classified review of GPS dependency across all American military platforms. The Department of Defense launched multiple programs to address the vulnerability, including M-code encrypted GPS receivers designed to be harder to spoof and RGPS constellation development programs to provide navigation redundancy. But here is the critical fact. As of the opening of Operation Epic Fury, full M-code receiver integration across the Israeli F-35I fleet was not complete. The upgrades exist. They are being implemented. They are not fully deployed, which means that in the operational environment over Iran right now, some percentage of the Israeli F-35I fleet is flying with GPS vulnerability profiles that Iran has been specifically engineering against for over a decade. Structural fact number 3, the electromagnetic contest in this war is not one-sided, and that asymmetry matters deeply. America opened Operation Epic Fury with the most sophisticated electromagnetic offensive in the history of warfare. EA-18G Growler aircraft suppressed Iranian radar systems. U.S. Space Force satellite constellations provided real-time targeting and warning. Cyber operations collapsed Iran's internet to 4% of normal traffic within hours of the first strikes. The IDF's own 51st 14th Spectrum Warfare Battalion, which was formally established after the June 2025 war, specifically to conduct real-time electromagnetic spectrum manipulation, is actively operating in this conflict. Israel is not passive in the electronic domain. Israel is extremely capable, but Iran is still transmitting. Iran deployed its GPS spoofing network from mobile platforms on trucks, constantly repositioned, operating on pre-planned emission schedules that limit their detectable signature to minutes at a time. When Israeli signals intelligence attempts to geolocate an active spoofing transmitter, the platform has relocated before a strike mission can be planned and executed. The IRGC cyber headquarters was destroyed in a kinetic strike, degrading Iran's ability to centrally coordinate its electronic warfare operations. But the distributed network of jamming and spoofing platforms continues operating because it was specifically designed not to require central coordination to function. You can degrade it. You cannot eliminate it without locating every mobile platform simultaneously, and nobody has that targeting picture. Structural fact number 4, the GPS interference is shutting down global shipping in ways that carry direct strategic consequences for the United States. The Strait of Hormuz carries 20% of the world's oil. Precise navigation through a 39-kilometer-wide channel where vessels are actively being struck by drones and missiles, where GPS is showing tankers they are on dry land, has become operationally untenable for commercial insurers. Lloyd's of London and other major marine insurers have already moved the region into war risk territory. Multiple major carriers have suspended or severely restricted Strait of Hormuz transit. Oil prices have moved above $100 a barrel and touched $114 in March, the highest level since the COVID-19 pandemic. Analysts at JP Morgan and elsewhere have issued warnings about global recession risk if the disruption continues. Now, here is the connection that most people are missing. Every tanker that cannot navigate the strait safely because its GPS is telling it false coordinates is a tanker that is not delivering oil to Asia and Europe. Every barrel of oil that does not flow through the strait is another increment of economic pressure that Iran is applying without firing a single missile. The GPS spoofing campaign is simultaneously disrupting Israeli air operations and strangling global energy flows. One electronic warfare campaign. Two strategic effects, and the United States is trying to address both simultaneously while also prosecuting a kinetic air campaign across an entire country the size of Alaska with a population of 90 million people. Structural fact number 5. Multiple allied nations refuse to send warships to help secure the Strait of Hormuz. Australia, Germany, Greece, Italy, Japan, and the United Kingdom all declined when President Trump made the request. Let me say that again. The closest allies the United States has in the world, the allies that have participated in every American military operation since the Second World War, looked at the GPS contested, mine-threatened, drone-struck, missile-targeted operating environment in the Persian Gulf and said no. This is not a small diplomatic setback. This is allied nations making a rational calculation that the electromagnetic and kinetic environment Iran has created in the Gulf is sufficiently dangerous that they are not willing to operate inside it. When your closest allies will not send their ships into the operating environment your adversary has created, that is a strategic signal of enormous importance. Now, I want to talk about what the players in this situation actually want, because this is where the GPS war connects to something much larger. What does Iran actually want from its electronic warfare campaign? Not what it says. What it actually wants. Iran wants time. That is the core objective. Iran has been absorbing strikes from the most powerful air force in the world for 6 weeks. The IDF and CENTCOM have dropped over 4,000 munitions on Iranian territory. They have reportedly eliminated over 70% of Iran's missile launchers. They have destroyed major elements of Iran's defense industrial base. They have killed multiple IRGC commanders. Iran cannot win the kinetic exchange in the air. It knows this. Iran's objective is not to win in the air. It is to raise the cost of staying high enough, fast enough, that America finds the exit before Iran runs out of missiles. The GPS campaign serves this objective in 3 ways. First, it degrades the precision of Israeli strikes, which means Iran absorbs less damage per sortie than it would in a clean electromagnetic environment. Second, it disrupts global shipping, which applies economic pressure on American allies and the American domestic economy simultaneously, accelerating the political timeline inside the United States. Third, it forces the United States to commit significant resources and attention to electromagnetic countermeasures, diverting capacity from the kinetic campaign. It is an asymmetric force multiplier. A $50,000 mobile jamming platform on a truck is degrading the operational effectiveness of a $100 million aircraft. That cost ratio matters. That cost ratio is the same logic Iran has applied to its drone and missile campaigns, and it is working in the same way for the same structural reason. America's military system is designed for precision and decisive victory. Iran's strategy is designed to make precision unreliable and decisive victory structurally impossible. Now, let me tell you what America actually wants from this conflict, because understanding the GPS problem requires understanding the larger strategic objective. What does America say it wants? It says it wants to eliminate Iran's ballistic missile infrastructure and prevent Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapons capability. CENTCOM, Commander Admiral Brad Cooper has stated these objectives publicly and repeatedly. What does America actually want? It wants to keep the Strait of Hormuz open, because a closed strait is an oil shock. An oil shock is a global recession. A global recession is the end of American financial credibility. This is the fundamental structural tension in this entire war. America is trying to destroy the military capability of a country that controls the single most important energy choke point in the world. And that country is using control of that choke point as its primary strategic weapon. Every bomb America drops gives Iran another justification for keeping the strait disrupted. Every disrupted tanker raises oil prices further. Every dollar oil rises puts more political pressure on an American administration that ran on economic performance. Iran understands this trade completely. America is trapped inside it. Now I want to make 3 predictions, not opinions, structural conclusions from everything I have just walked you through. Prediction 1. The GPS and electromagnetic contest in this war does not end before the kinetic contest ends, and it is going to get worse before it gets better. Here is why. Iran's distributed mobile jamming network was specifically engineered to survive kinetic strikes on fixed headquarters. The IRGC Cyber HQ was destroyed. The network kept operating. This means America cannot bomb its way out of the electromagnetic problem. It must solve it technically through faster deployment of M-code receivers, anti-jam antennas, and alternative navigation systems. That takes months. The war is weeks old. The window between those 2 timelines is where Iran's GPS campaign is most effective, and Iran knows this. Prediction 2. The inability to cleanly suppress Iran's electronic warfare network will slow the IDF's air campaign in ways that create increasing political pressure inside Israel over the next 60 to 90 days. Israel's military doctrine requires rapid, decisive results. The air campaign against Iran has now passed 6 weeks. Iranian missiles and drones are still reaching Israeli territory. Hezbollah is still firing from Lebanon. The GPS-contested environment means that Israeli strike accuracy is measurably lower than it would be in a clean navigation environment. And measurably lower accuracy means more strikes are required to achieve the same effects. More strikes means more aircraft in the air. More aircraft in a GPS-contested environment means more potential incidents like the March 19 emergency landing. The political pressure for results, for the decisive victory that Israel's doctrine demands, is going to build inside Israel's war cabinet in ways that force difficult decisions. Prediction 3. The structural lesson of Iran's GPS campaign will outlast this conflict by decades. And this is the most important prediction. What Iran has demonstrated in the Strait of Hormuz and over the Middle East in 2026 is that a GPS-dependent military force is a force that can be partially neutralized by a determined adversary with access to the right electronic warfare technology without firing a single kinetic round at the aircraft itself. Every defense ministry in the world with a serious military planning function is incorporating this lesson right now. In Taipei, where planners are thinking about how to defend against a Chinese military that is far more capable than Iran's. In Seoul, where planners are thinking about North Korea's own demonstrated GPS jamming capability, which has already caused incidents affecting civilian aviation in South Korea on multiple occasions. In Moscow and Beijing, where military engineers are watching the Iranian performance and extracting every technical and operational lesson available. This is what a demonstration effect looks like. Iran is not just fighting Israel and the United States, it is writing a manual that every non-Western military force on Earth is now reading. Now let me address the 3 questions everyone is asking. Question 1, did Iran actually blind the F-35s completely? No, not completely. That is not what the evidence shows, and it would be dishonest to say otherwise. What the evidence shows is that Iran has created a GPS-contested environment that degrades operational effectiveness, forces pilots to rely more heavily on backup navigation systems that are less accurate, and creates risks in weapons delivery that did not exist before this conflict began. An F-35 operating with degraded GPS in an Iranian electromagnetic environment is not blind. It is operating under significantly increased operational friction. In a war where precision is everything, increased operational friction is not a small problem. It is a structural disadvantage that compounds over time. Question 2. Can America solve this problem with technology? Yes, eventually. The M-Code GPS receiver program, the RGPS constellation development, the anti-jam antenna systems that companies like Infinidome are now deploying at accelerating scale, these are real solutions to a real problem, but they require time to deploy, test, and integrate. And Iran knows how long that process takes. The 15-year gap between the RQ-170 capture and the current conflict is exactly how long it took Iran to turn its 2011 intelligence windfall into a deployed operational capability. The solutions to Iran's current capability will not be fully deployed before this conflict reaches its conclusion. Question 3. Is this the end of American air dominance in the Middle East? No. America retains overwhelming advantages in every dimension of aerial warfare. But this conflict has established something that cannot be reversed. It has established that a GPS-contested environment over a combat theater is not a theoretical possibility. It is an operational reality that any sufficiently motivated adversary with adequate technical resources and 15 years of preparation can create. The age of uncontested GPS dependency is over. The American military has known this was coming. It now has to live with the consequences in real time. In a real war against an adversary that prepared for this specific confrontation longer than most of the pilots flying these missions have been in uniform. Okay, let me bring this together, because there is a pattern here that goes far deeper than GPS. I have explained before how Iran's strategy in this conflict is not designed to achieve military victory. It is designed to make the cost of continuing this war exceed the political will to continue paying it. The GPS campaign is not a standalone operation. It is one layer of a multi-domain cost imposition strategy. Iran fires drones and missiles to impose kinetic costs. It mines and disrupts the Strait of Hormuz to impose economic costs. It deploys GPS spoofing networks to impose operational costs on the air campaign. It uses cyber operations through groups like Handala to impose costs on American and Gulf state digital infrastructure. In March of this year, Handala attacked Stryker Corporation, a major American medical technology firm, and exfiltrated significant volumes of sensitive data. Every one of these operations is calibrated to the same objective: make America look at the full cost of this war and decide the exit is preferable to continuation. And the political mathematics of that calculation are moving. 13 American service members have died, 303 have been wounded, 5 aerial refueling aircraft were struck and damaged at Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia. A KC-135 tanker crashed in western Iraq on March 12th, killing 6 airmen. 6 nations that America asked to help secure the strait declined. The economic cost of the war is requiring a supplemental congressional funding package. Public support for the conflict inside the United States is not growing. These are structural constraints, not opinions. They are the same constraints that ended American involvement in Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan, and they are accumulating in the same direction. The GPS war is the most visible expression of a deeper truth about this conflict: that America is fighting with the most expensive military machine ever assembled against an adversary that has spent 15 years studying exactly how to make that machine malfunction, not by building a better machine, by attacking the invisible infrastructure that makes the machine work. Iran did not need to shoot down an F-35. It needed to make the F-35 slightly less trusted than it was before this war began, and it has done that right now, in the live operational environment over the Middle East. History does not forget these moments. The Sicilian expedition of Athens in 415 BC did not fail because Athens lacked ships. It failed because the operational environment in Sicily was nothing like what Athenian doctrine had prepared for. Athens walked into a theater it did not understand, against an adversary it consistently underestimated. The parallels are uncomfortable and they are intentional. I may be wrong about how this ends. I have told you before that I may be wrong. But the structure of this situation says the following: America is prosecuting an air campaign in an electromagnetic environment that its adversary has specifically prepared for 15 years. The cost of that preparation is now being measured in disrupted tankers, emergency landings, degraded weapons delivery solutions, and declining Allied support. The exit from this war, when it comes, will be shaped in part by how many of those costs accumulate before the political mathematics inside America reach their tipping point. And the GPS campaign is one of the mechanisms Iran is using to accelerate that accumulation. That is not prophecy. That is the structural logic of the situation we are in right now.